Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and Battle Partners is right around the corner. Actually, Battle Partners is out. Journey Together is right around the corner. Battle Partners is the Japanese set that came out around a month ago, so Japan's been messing around with the set and making some really cool decks and things like that. And they've seen what the metagame's kind of shaping up to be like post-rotation. Rotation is the loss of all the Sword and Shield cards, all the cards from, I believe, 3 years ago, or maybe four. Three, I don't remember. But from a little while ago, those cards are going to be rotating from the format, as you can't play them. It'll be all the Scarlet and Violet cards will be, the standard format. And by the end of this year slash the very beginning of next year, we will have the standard format being all the cards from the entire Scarlet and Violet format or era, which is going to be really cool. But regardless, this set has a lot of really cool cards in it. You have really high, like, top level cards are pretty top level cards. For example, stuff like Hops and Ends, which are both top 10 decks in Japan. Hops is like the Hops Pokemon, Hops Ashi and EX, as well as like Hops Snorlax, Hops Cramorant. These cards are being played predominantly within our Caledon. So if you haven't really heard too much stuff being said about the hop stack, that's kind of what it is. It's or Caledoniacs and also hop stuff and a bit of mixing and matching. People have been playing hop some without it, but not that much. However, those decks are good. You have the trainers Pokemon, the other ones like Iono and Lillie, which are a bit different as they have less cards. The Iono's deck I definitely think is the weakest of the four. So sorry to any fans of Iono, and like Iono's Belly Bolt EX. I don't think it's super good. It's not terrible. It's like if you wanted to play it, it's a solid deck. It's a playable deck, but I don't see it being in the top 10, and I believe it's not in Japan either right now. But there are a lot of other cards that are really cool from this set. There's, say, Tyranitar, which is an item lock single. Well, okay, I don't know if this is cool, but it's good and it's unique and interesting. It's a card that item locks if it's in the active. It's been, hasn't been played that much in Japan, but it's been played some. And so this card is, solid. There's a bunch of really solid single prizes like Lycanroc, and as I said, there's like the hop stuff like Hops Cramorant, which can be played in a wide variety of decks. There's Magearna. There is I'm trying to think of the ones that are like seriously pretty solid. There's Ludicolo is not that good. It's kind of fun. There's Magmortar as well. Again, not super strong, but kind of fun. And Meowscarada, again, not super strong, but cool. And these cards are, borderline playable. Some are, quite good. So you have some really cool stuff going on here. But today I'm going to be talking about some underrated cards at various different levels. The first of which is Maractus. This is a Pokemon that I thought was like a random filler Pokemon when I first saw it. And in Japan, it's being played a decent amount. Looking at the City League tournament results here on Limitless, it has somewhere under 50 plays, but above 25. So, this many plays. This is top 16 placings within a 64-player tournament. So that's the idea of, how good this is. It's not like the best card from the set or anything, but it is pretty solid. And it's something you may be familiar with called trapping, is the term that I use. It's used some by other people as well. It's not something that I made up or anything like that. But you get a Pokemon stuck in the active, you trap it in the active spot. Of course, this is done in standard with Snorlax, but there's also Wellspring Mass Ogre EX that might actually be more common. There's Totodile, which is not really that common pre-rotation, however, is a legit thing post-rotation within the Feraligatr deck. And there's also Mawile. Mawile is a Pokemon that I think is really awesome and very similar to Maractus. Mawile hasn't seen that much play if you're not actually familiar with Mawile. It's a card which is rotating, but it says Tempting Trap. It traps your opponent's active in the in the active. They cannot retreat, and then the next turn they take 90 more. So that's something that people usually don't take that much advantage of. This is a card that's played in some different decks in standard. It's not some weird rogue card, but it's not the most common. And in Japan as well, you can see that it's been played. However, it is a card that is pretty similar to Maractus, which stops your opponent's active from retreating and also does 20 for one colorless. Then you have this ability here, Explosive Needle, which says if this Pokemon is in the active spot, it's knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, put 6 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. This does not need to be a one-shot like I don't know, some things like this need to be one shot, some things don't. This one doesn't. It needs to be knocked out. It's not any damage done to you. And if you knock yourself out or they knock you out through some other means, then this ability will not trigger either. But this is an extra 60 damage, which is solid. And Corner is doing a little bit of damage and also giving you time. Maractus has seen play in a lot of different decks. And I cannot sort here, unfortunately. However, the one that really stands out is, I'll open up. I know it's so weird that it like won this tournament with Espathra EX, but the list are playing Espathra EX is really weird. It's a card that I think is cool. But anyways, I won't talk about that. I'll talk about the Frostlass though, which is the main way I think that Maractus is being played, which is really weird because if you don't know what Frostlass does, once during Pokemon checkup every turn, which is between either player's turn, it goes both ways. So between the start of your turn and the start of your next turn, Pokemon checkup happens twice. Then you put 1 damage counter on each Pokemon that has an ability, both yours and your opponent's except Frostlass. And you can stack with multiple Frostlasses and damage your own Pokemon and your opponent's Pokemon a bunch. Essentially every Pokemon in this deck has an ability, which is kind of weird, including Maractus. But the idea is to heal off with a Monkey Dory, which also does have an ability. So if you have 2 Frostlasses up and you're healing exclusively your Monkey Dory and not even anything else, Monkey Dory will still be building up damage on itself. So it definitely feels kind of sketchy and feels like you will be taking a bunch of damage here. And that will end up knocking out all your Pokemon, but I guess not. And then, because this is something that's being played, and then you have Monkey Dory to move damage off of your Pokemon to add more to your opponent's Pokemon. And you have Maractus to, of course, trap your opponent's active Pokemon and get something stuck like, I'll just say Enzoric EX. That's one that came across my mind. I mean, actually, the first one was Barrel, and then also like Curly Up, but those are rotating. So, and Curly is not even a good example anyways, but you can trap Enzoric EX in some deck using it exclusively as an engine. Same thing with Fezandipti EX or something like that. And you can be building up a little bit of extra damage on that and on their bench Pokemon through the use of Frostlass. Buying a bunch of times with Maractus. We also see Badoo having a similar function, item locking, and also does not have an ability, which is nice because it only has 30 HP. And then you can slow your opponent down and essentially stop them and build up enough damage to knock out all their Pokemon and win the game. However, it has been played in other decks as well. We can see it in Dragapult EX, this deck, Okidogi, which I've seen a few times. I don't really know why. I mean, it's like fine. We see it in like a Walls box deck, but Dragapult, Charizard, various different decks, and it's been, it's like a solid card there. It's cheap. It allows you to buy some extra time and build up your board state, potentially build up damage on your opponent's Pokemon if that's something that your deck is doing, but mostly build up your board state, your hand, things like this, get extra energies on the board, and buy some time and apply a little bit of pressure to your opponent's Pokemon. It's a card, as I said, I did not think it was going to be good, but it has been legitimately good in Japan. It's a card that, you definitely do need to be aware of. The next card we have here is Volcanion EX. This card is really cool. Volcanion is a Pokemon. Volcanion EX has this ability. Its attack is pretty bad. It's not the worst I've ever seen, but it's not very good. But your ability, once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active, you may leave your opponent's active Pokemon burned. Then, of course, if they are burnt, they take 20 damage during Pokemon checkup, and then after they take the 20 damage. So you will always be doing at least 20 damage with this ability, assuming they don't like turn off the burn through I don't know. I don't know. I can't think of a way off the top of my head that they'd stop the burn. Special condition, there are certain cards that would stop this, but like Mist Energy doesn't stop it. It's effective attack. So presumably they'll take the 20 and then they flip a coin. If tails, they are still burned. They can then like retreat or evolve or whatever, and then they're not burned anymore. So they'll probably just take 20. There is a Magmortar I mentioned, I think, from the set that increases burn damage. The Magmortar has seen some play. It's not some weird rogue card. Well, I don't know. Actually, it probably is some weird rogue card. But it's seen a little bit of play. However, actually, as a Badoo box style card, there's like a few versions of Badoo, of what I call Badoo box. There's the Frostlass box, which plays Maractus as well, and Badoo. And then there's also this burn-based list with the Magmortar. I think there might be some poison-based lists as well, kind of like Cloth Terapagos, except you don't have double turbo, so you can't really use Cloth or Terapagos EX that well. So more focus is put on Badoo. But then with Volcanion EX, you can use this to burn your opponent's active, and this is played in a good chunk of different decks, including potentially my favorite deck from post rotation. I've said this about a few different decks, but I've said it about this one as well, which is the the deck that actually was played in the recent the recent Champions League tournament, which has a lot more people than the City Leagues. Volcanion EX was not played in this list or in this deck, but this is the basic box deck is what I'll call it, where you have Teal Mask Ogre Pawn EX. We see Wellstream Mask Ogre Pawn EX, which, by the way, I think Ogre's Mask would be really cool to put in this deck. We see Pikachu EX, the new Lillie's Clefairy EX, as well as a bunch of different basics. We see Badoo and we see Knocked Owl as well. And you can definitely put in Volcanion EX, which will allow you to do a little bit of extra damage. It's like 20 extra damage. It's kind of like Iron Valiant EX. It's actually very similar in that manner, because you need to be in the active and then you do the 20. However, one massive difference is you can start your turn with this in the active and then retreat out. Versus Iron Valiant EX, it only happens when you move into the active, and this is during your turn. So if you send it up during your opponent's turn after you're knocked out, you can get the extra damage with Volcanion EX, but you cannot with Iron Valiant EX. Of course, Volcanion EX, you can't use multiple to get extra burn. That's not how the special condition works. Versus you could do that with Iron Valiant EX, but Volcanion EX plus Latias EX is a really solid combination. You normally have a retreat cost of 3, which is really bad. But with Latias EX, then it's free, so you can just retreat out without having to worry about it. Then you could put it in these Lillie's Clefairy EX decks where you want lots of Pokemon on your bench, and you also want a bit of extra damage. That's pretty nice there. And this is pretty consistent extra damage. And you also potentially have more turns, specifically turns after knockout, because Lillie's Clefairy EX is a Pokemon that's going to be taking or giving up less prizes, or one less prize with the tool card Lillie's Pearl. And then it's been played in some different things, not too much else, but is definitely a pretty cool card that I think is an option in any deck playing Latias EX. Is it a good option in any deck playing Latias EX? Not necessarily, but it is an option, and it is really, really cool. The next card we have here is Lillie's Clefairy EX, which I have mentioned. I mentioned the Trainer's Pokemon. I mentioned this with Volcanion EX and with Maractus a little bit, not that much, but this card is really cool. As I said, it was played in the Champions League tournament that was recently held. This isn't necessarily, one tournament shouldn't be is not a complete representation of the entire metagame. However, it is a way to look at, what people are playing and what's good and stuff like that. And this has been played some. And looking at the metagame in Japan, if we look at some tournaments, this is just going to be the winners of the tournaments, and I'll look at 100 here. We can see that Dragapult EX is really the top deck, pretty clearly, though there's one deck that is second. That deck is Raging Bolt Ogre Pawn. You could argue this is better. I actually don't know what all these decks are. I don't know what these Knocked Owl Ogre Pawn decks are. They could be Raging Bolt Ogre Pawn. They could also be the Lillie's Clefairy EX Toolbox style deck. Not sure what those are, but anyways, what are those two types? Or what types are those two decks? They're Dragon type, and what is the weakness of Dragon Pokemon? Let's take a look. Oh, it doesn't have a weakness. Yeah, so these Pokemon are really difficult to deal with, partially because they don't have a weakness. Comparing it to, say, Charizard EX, which is a legitimate deck, I think it's probably the third best deck, though I'm not 100% sure on that, but it is weak to grass. People do play different grass Pokemon. Teal Mask Ogre Pawn EX is not played just to counter it, but it is a card that is, very good against Charizard EX because it hits it for weakness. But you do have Lillie's Clefairy EX, which allows you to hit weakness on these Dragon Pokemon, like Dragapult EX and Raging Bolt EX, which are, as I said, the two best decks in the game and making up a very substantial portion of the metagame. Then you can play this in a lot of different decks. You can play as its own attacker. What it does is 20 and 20 more for each bench Pokemon, both yours and your opponents. You can, of course, play Aerial Zero Underdepths to expand your bench, potentially your opponents as well, to be doing massive damage and taking one-shots without weakness, but you can hit weakness on, as I said, some of the best decks in the game. And then you have the tool card, which I mentioned. This tool card is really amazing. Not in this list. This is a little bit different. Let me find a list here. And here we go. This one plays the tool, which is Lillie's Pearl, which says that you give up one less prize when knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon. This means you're a one prizer. Again, same stuff I said about Maractus. It's knocked out. It's by damage, so there are ways to get around it. Your opponent could turn off the tool as well, so that would be bad for you. Certainly, a card you don't want to be seeing is going to be jamming tower. That's not ideal. It's played some. I don't actually know how much is being played, but it certainly is a solid option and annoying for this deck. However, you are a really, really solid attacker that can do decent damage. You're looking at this card again similarly, or actually same damage output wise compared to Entei V, Raikou V, or Suicune V. Suicune V is not in standard. Raikou V and Entei V are both actually rotating, and it has a similar attack name. This, I believe, should be exact, as this card was revealed at the World Championship. Also, speaking of the Lillie stuff, this really is the only Lillie's Pokemon. There's a few others. They're pretty bad. Then the tool card is good. It's really just here to support Lillie's Clefairy EX, but this is a really good card both as a tech option against these top decks and within as like an attacking tech option, a main attacker, or a tech option within psychic based decks like Gardevoir EX or Slowking. I guess that's another psychic deck. I was like, what else is there? Also, apparently, again, looking at just random decks, someone played this this Lapras EX, Hydreigon EX deck that I just saw, and I don't know, I was not expecting this. This seems bad, but it seems funny. So, anyways, that's there for you. But yeah, this is really cool within the basic box deck or within or as a counter option or both. So this is a card that is probably the best trainers Pokemon, to be honest. It's really close, or I don't know if it's really close, but some of the Hops Pokemon are really good and versatile. Hops Kermit is quite good, and Hops Double I think is really good as well. Hops Double has not seen that much play, but I legitimately think it is a really, really good card that could almost change the metagame. The next card here, though, is going to be Noivern. This is one of my favorite cards from the set. Looking at how much this has been played in Japan, it's been played this much. Yeah, it's not been played presumably at all. I mean, maybe some people have played it and not done very well. This is not very strong, but it is really cool, and I think I don't know if it's underrated, but I want to talk about it. And it's a card that for 3 colors does 110 in confusion. However, it actually is free, so it's 110 in confusion for free and has free retreat. Those stats are not absolutely insane, and you're doing the same number of cards in your hand as your opponent. And also, this is not going to allow you to use technical machines for free either. However, this card is really cool. Noivern EX is a really solid Pokemon, not amazing. I mean, it's okay. It is losing double turbo energy as well, but whatever. Noivern EX is all right, I guess. I mean, Lil's Clefairy EX is also floating around, and it's not amazing, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about this Noivern right here. 110 for free. Does that sound familiar? Hopefully it does to Cramorant. Cramorant is not the best Pokemon in the game, but it's pretty good as a free attacker that does 110. It is a basic, and that's a little, better, certainly. Noticeably better, but you do need 4 cards in the Lost Zone, which I would say is harder to get than this ability. I mean, if you're really locked into Lost Zone, then it's very doable, and it's something you'll have throughout the course of the game, but you need to tailor your deck around it. Noivern is a card you could put into different decks. I think functions decently well. It's a single price attacking option. I think it's a really cool card. This is definitely a card that I think is really fun, and is more so like a my card kind of thing, as opposed to a really top card. But Noivern is really cool. The last card we have here, though, is going to be Brock's Scouting is how it's translated. I don't know if that's how it will be translated internationally into English. It could be Brock's. I don't know. I think I've seen Brock's Training, but anyway, it's Brock something. This is not a trainer's Pokemon card. Previously I said, so we got like Iris's, I think it's Fighting Spirit or something. There's no Iris's Pokemon. The supporters in this set are not related to the trainers on the trainers Pokemon. I originally said that's not true for any of the trainers. However, we have seen in Ethan's card revealed that's Ethan something that interacts with Ethan's Pokemon. So, we might see that in the future again. We probably will in a few other cards, but regardless, this Brock Scouting has nothing to do with Brock's Pokemon, which we probably aren't going to be getting, to be honest. I don't know for sure, but I'd predict not, so sorry if you're a Brock fan. But anyways, this is a supporter card allowing you to search for up to 2 basic Pokemon or an evolution Pokemon and put them into your hand, or put that card into your hand and then shuffle your deck. This is interesting. I don't think this card's that good, but I think it's okay. In some ways, it's outclassed by different cards. It only gets, getting 1 evolution. Comparing it to Jack gets you 2. That's just worse. And then getting 2 basics. There are cards that get you. I mean, there's Buddy Buddy Poffin. There's there's ways to get basics, right? But This gets you any Pokemon, and it's not Ultra Ball. It can get you two basics, which is nice. I think this card has enough use cases where it's solid. And in Japan, it's seen, a good chunk of play, not anything crazy. This is not a top tier supporter. It's like a mid tier supporter. And I've said this a lot about mid tier supporters. They really get forgotten, but they're definitely solid to mess around with. And you should, I'd, recommend everyone to mess around with the different mid tier supporters, looking at cards like Surfer. Um, and Drayden, I guess, is there. There's new Iris's Fighting Spirit. I think that's a bit worse, and not a card I care for as much, but that's a mid-tier supporter that's been played a little bit in Japan. And also, Brock's Training, Brock's Scouting, whatever it's called. Definitely different options you should mess around with, because there's probably one that you'll find that you like. Probably just one out of like 5 or 10, but it's a cool card that can give you some different options, and it's just cool. Not too much to say about it. We see it in like Charizard, Pidgeot, Dragon Ball Dusknoir, these decks that play a bunch of different Pokemon of different stages, and you can kind of get something, and you can get what you want. It's not going to be some card that's setting you up amazingly, but it gets you, it kind of covers things up in maybe an awkward position when you're like a little bit short, or you don't want to have to discard cards from like Arvin to get Ultra Ball. It's again not amazing, but it's not bad. It's a solid supporter, and solid supporters don't get talked about enough. But anyways, as I said, I'm really excited for this set. But tell me down below in the comments what you're most excited for. I hope you enjoyed. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, joining the channel, all that good stuff. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.